Silence wounds deeper than words. This is what the Stoics called the hidden strength of the mind. It does not shout, it does not explain, it does not justify, and yet it breaks the strongest egos. In Stoicism, this power has a name: strategic silence. We are taught to believe that confrontation brings resolution, but the most devastating blow comes not from anger, but from absence. To disappear without noise, to withhold reaction, to deny the stage to those who crave it, this is power in its purest form. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it is better to conquer anger by silence than to feed it with words. In a world where manipulation thrives on attention, silence becomes an act of rebellion. When you learn to use it, you no longer beg for respect, you command it. The truth is brutal. The less you say, the louder your absence speaks. And once the door is closed, those who disrespected you will never recover. Today we begin a journey into a forgotten weapon, one that Stoic philosophers used not only to endure tyranny, betrayal, and loss, but to rise above them. We are taught from a young age that dialogue can solve everything. That communication is the key to every relationship, that if someone hurts you, you should let them explain, apologize, and promise to do better. Society feeds us this sweet belief: forgiveness means opening your arms, moving on, and giving people another chance. But this belief has trapped millions in toxic cycles they can never escape. When you believe that talking things through will change people, you hand toxic people and manipulators the very weapon they need for manipulation. Every explanation you offer is another piece they can twist. Every second chance you grant is another door for them to walk back through. The harsh truth is, these manipulators are never truly sorry. They thrive on repetition, on exploiting kindness, on convincing you that you owe them patience. And so you fall into the trap again and again. You forgive. You reopen the door and you become a character in their endless game. History proves how dangerous this illusion can be. In Rome, Seneca watched men like Emperor Nero apologize and promise reform only to return to cruelty and excess. Seneca wrote, "The wicked man does not change, he only waits for the right moment to act again." He wasn't just describing politics, but human nature itself. His warning is pure Stoicism: toxic relationships repeat themselves, and only strategic silence can break the cycle. Manipulators always wait for a crack in the wall, and that crack is often our belief that everyone deserves another chance. Modern psychology has a name for this cycle: trauma bonding. When someone abuses you but occasionally shows affection, your brain latches onto the illusion that they can change. This is exactly the mechanism manipulators exploit. And when you believe forgiveness equals reconciliation, you're not healing, you're fueling the cycle. We're also told that silence is childish, immature, even cowardly. But that's another lie. The truth is, silence terrifies manipulators because it denies them the very thing they feed on: your reaction. Every argument, every tear, every desperate explanation is fuel for their fire. They live off your response. Your words keep the game alive. And here's the dangerous part: this belief system doesn't just exist in personal relationships, it runs through our entire culture. Religion, society, even literature glorify the idea that forgiveness means taking people back. But Stoicism sees it differently. For Marcus Aurelius, forgiveness meant freeing yourself from hatred. It never meant inviting someone to keep hurting you. Forgiveness is an inner act of liberation, not an open door. Today, manipulators are more subtle, but no less destructive. They might be a coworker who constantly blames you, then apologizes with fake humility, a former lover who comes back with promises of change, a family member who wounds you again and again, but hides behind the word blood. In every case, the cycle is the same. They harm, they apologize, you forgive, and the wheel turns once more. What no one tells you is this: the more chances you give, the more you lose your dignity. They don't see your kindness, they see your weakness. And weakness feeds their ego. That is why manipulators always recover while victims are slowly drained. The belief that talking will fix everything is the root of suffering. It is the door that keeps you locked inside the cycle. And here is where Stoicism cuts through like a blade. You don't need to argue, to explain, or to offer another chance. You only need to walk away. And in that silence, you win. The Stoics understood something that modern society has almost forgotten: power is not in how loudly you speak, but in how firmly you refuse to engage. Words are easy to manipulate, promises are easy to twist, but silence is impossible to counterfeit. It is the one weapon that cannot be turned against you. This is the essence of what we call strategic silence. It is not the silence of passivity or weakness. It is not indifference, nor is it avoidance. It is a deliberate, calculated withdrawal of access, emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical. It is the art of stepping away so completely that the other person is forced to face the void of their own powerlessness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. What he meant is simple: when you refuse to react in kind, you break the cycle. Strategic silence embodies this idea. Instead of arguing, instead of explaining, instead of feeding the manipulator's script, you offer them nothing. No stage, no audience, no fuel. And in that nothingness, they collapse. The Stoics lived in a brutal world. Seneca served under Nero, a man notorious for his cruelty and paranoia. To survive, Seneca could not afford to react to every insult, every test, every provocation. His writings show a constant practice of restraint. He believed the highest form of strength was not in the sword or the tongue, but in self-mastery. Strategic silence, then, is not a retreat. It is the ultimate display of control. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies on abusive relationships show that the most effective way to end manipulation is to cut off access to reaction. Therapists call it the gray rock method, presenting no emotional response, no drama, no weakness to exploit. Stoicism anticipated this thousands of years ago. The same principle runs through Epictetus's teachings. When someone provokes you, remember it is not the insult that harms you, but your interpretation of it. To remain silent is to refuse interpretation. To refuse interpretation is to refuse control. Strategic silence can be defined in 3 words: withdrawal without guilt. It is not punishment. It is not revenge. It is the conscious recognition that your peace is worth more than maintaining ties that have already drained you. And in that recognition lies freedom. Think of it this way: manipulators thrive on attention like fire thrives on oxygen. Every word you speak is air. Every explanation is fuel. The moment you seal the flame off, it dies. Your silence suffocates their control. Your absence becomes the one thing they cannot fight. But let us be clear, this form of silence requires immense strength. It demands self-control because the natural impulse is to explain yourself, to defend your worth, to prove that you are not weak. Strategic silence rejects that impulse. It says, I do not owe you my voice, I do not owe you my energy, and I do not owe you another chance. This is not about cruelty, it is about boundaries. The Stoics believe that every individual is responsible for protecting their inner citadel, the fortress of the mind and soul. If you allow others to breach it again and again, you are complicit in your own destruction. But if you set firm walls, reinforced by silence, you become untouchable. Think of Marcus Aurelius on the battlefield, surrounded by enemies and betrayals within his own court. He did not lash out blindly. He did not waste energy in shouting contests. He endured in silence, wrote his thoughts privately in meditations, and focused on mastering himself. That discipline allowed him to remain one of history's rare philosopher kings. In everyday life, strategic silence looks less dramatic, but no less powerful. It may be choosing not to reply to the manipulative text. It may be stepping away from the endless argument that never leads to change. It may be refusing to justify your choices to someone who has already proven they will never respect them. Each act of silence is a declaration. Access is closed. And here is where the true Stoic insight lies. Forgiveness does not mean reopening the door. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. It is the inner act of releasing resentment while keeping the boundary firmly shut. The manipulator expects forgiveness to be their password back in. Instead, they are met with silence. The gate is locked. The show is over. Strategic silence is not a single act, it is a discipline. It is the practice of holding your ground day after day until the toxic person realizes they no longer have control. At first, they will test you. They will push harder, send more messages, create more drama. They will grow angry, then desperate. But every unanswered attempt is a blow to their ego. Every moment of your absence is poison to their pride. And over time, silence does what no argument ever could. It destroys the illusion of their power. This is why Stoicism calls it wisdom, not weakness. To fight noise with noise is to remain in the game. To answer manipulation with silence is to end the game entirely. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And nothing lies more beyond your control than another person's behavior. What is in your control is your response or your refusal to respond. Strategic silence, then, is the embodiment of Stoic freedom. It is the refusal to be drawn into cycles of manipulation. It is the boundary that cannot be breached. It is the message that requires no words. I am no longer part of your script. Strategic silence is not abstract philosophy. It is a practical discipline that can be applied step by step in real life. To use it effectively, you need to understand the methods that turn silence into strength. Here are 4 Stoic strategies that transform absence into authority. 1. Forgive, but do not reopen the door. Most people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. Society tells you that if you forgive, you must also welcome the person back into your life. But that is not Stoicism. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not about rewarding the offender. When you forgive, but keep the door closed, you shift the balance of power. The manipulator expects forgiveness to be their ticket back in. Instead, they face the locked gate. They feel the weight of rejection, not through anger or insults, but through absence. It is a silent humiliation, more devastating than any argument, because it leaves them with no script to play. Seneca wrote, "To be angry is to be punished by your own passion." Forgiveness without reconciliation embodies this principle. You release your anger, but you do not abandon your boundaries. You step out of the emotional trap while ensuring it cannot ensnare you again. For the manipulator, this is unbearable. For you, it is liberation. 2. Subtle boundaries. The invisible wall. Boundaries do not need to be loud or dramatic. In fact, the most effective boundaries are subtle, so subtle that the manipulator doesn't even notice until they crash into them. This is where silence becomes a shield. Instead of long explanations or confrontations, you simply change your behavior. You respond less. You withdraw your availability. You no longer explain where you are, why you didn't answer, or what you're doing. Without words, you redesign the territory of access. The manipulator becomes frustrated. They push, they provoke, they test, but nothing works. And because you haven't announced your boundary, they can't negotiate it. They can't twist your words against you. All they feel is the wall, impenetrable, unyielding. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as a citadel, a fortress that only you control. Subtle boundaries are the walls of that fortress. You don't have to shout about them. You simply live them. And in that quiet firmness, you become untouchable. 3. Humor as a shield. Stoicism is often associated with sternness, but the truth is the Stoics valued perspective. And one of the greatest weapons against manipulation is humor, not cruel sarcasm, but light, confident humor that disarms the aggressor. Why does this work? Because manipulators thrive on emotional intensity. They want anger, tears, or desperation. When you respond with calm irony or a light laugh, you deny them the reaction they crave. It is as if they throw their strongest punch and you deflect it with a smile. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, waiting for you to explode. Instead, you respond with a joke that shifts the tension away. The attack falls flat. They lose their grip on the situation. Humor, when used wisely, communicates, "You do not control me." In Roman history, Epictetus was a slave who rose to become one of the greatest Stoic teachers. He endured mockery and cruelty, but he often answered with wit. His humor was not weakness, it was freedom. By refusing to take the bait, he dismantled his oppressors without raising his voice. For you, humor as a shield preserves your peace while stripping the manipulator of power. It shows the world and yourself that their attempts at control are laughable. 4. No stage for manipulation. The final strategy is simple. Deny them the stage. Every manipulator is a performer. They thrive on drama, conflict, and attention. Without an audience, their performance collapses. This means you stop talking about them even to yourself. You stop replaying their words in your head. You stop feeding their presence with your energy. The less you mention them, the less they exist in your world. Psychologists call this starving the narcissist. Without your reaction, their ego begins to corrode. At first, they feel uneasy, then insecure, and finally powerless. Silence becomes poison to their identity. For you, this is more than protection, it is transformation. By denying them a stage, you reclaim your focus. Your energy flows back into your own life, your goals, your growth. And that growth itself becomes a form of silent revenge. Nothing humiliates a manipulator more than watching the person they tried to control thrive beyond their reach. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius advised the best answer to insult is not to imitate it. When you refuse to play the role they cast for you, their play ends. And in the silence that follows, you rediscover your freedom. The power of consistency. These strategies only work if applied with consistency. One moment of weakness, a reply, a reaction, a reopened door can reignite the cycle. But with discipline, silence becomes an unbreakable armor. Strategic silence is not about winning arguments. It is about refusing the argument altogether. It is not about teaching the manipulator a lesson. It is about refusing to sit in their classroom. It is the daily decision to place your peace above their control. And when practiced steadily, these strategies do more than protect you. They reshape you. They teach you self-mastery, focus, and resilience. They build the kind of inner strength the Stoics called virtue, the power to live free, untouched by the noise of others. Silence is not emptiness. It is power condensed into its purest form. When you finally stop explaining, stop defending, stop negotiating with manipulators, something extraordinary happens, the balance shifts. The stage that once belonged to them now belongs to you. At first, they don't believe it. They tell themselves it's temporary. They imagine you'll cave, that you'll return with one more apology or one more chance. But when you don't, when the silence stretches into days, weeks, months, their ego begins to crack. They realize the script no longer works. They cannot provoke you. They cannot lure you. They cannot summon you back. And that is the most devastating blow a manipulator can ever suffer, the loss of control. This is where silence ceases to be a defensive tactic and becomes an act of dominance. Not loud dominance, not aggressive posturing, but the quiet dominance that corrodes the ego from within. They replay their failures, wondering how they lost you, unable to accept that you walked away without a fight. Their pride rots in the emptiness you leave behind. The Stoics knew the psychological truth long before modern therapy gave it names. Epictetus taught that no one can control your mind without your consent. When you choose silence, you withdraw that consent. You sever the strings that made you a puppet in their theater. And as the curtains fall, you discover something greater, the strength to live on your own terms. Think of Marcus Aurelius surrounded by betrayal in his own court. He could have raged, shouted, confronted every whisper against him. Instead, he mastered the art of indifference to manipulation. He understood that the noise of others mattered less than the order within his own soul. That same lesson applies here. By refusing to engage, you preserve your order while their chaos consumes them. Strategic silence is not weakness. It is not retreat. It is the kind of strength that terrifies those who live off control, and it transforms you. The moment you resist the urge to answer one more message, to give one more chance, you prove to yourself that your boundaries are unshakable. That proof builds confidence, and confidence builds freedom. The transformation is profound. No longer do you beg for respect, you command it. No longer do you wait for change, you create it. No longer do you play the role of supporting character, you become the author of your story. This is more than a tactic for toxic relationships. It is a philosophy for life. In every arena, work, family, love, society, there are people who will try to claim space in your mind. They thrive on your attention, your explanations, your reactions. But the Stoics remind us your attention is the most valuable currency you possess. Spend it only where it brings peace, not chaos. Silence, then, is not just a wall against manipulation. It is a declaration of sovereignty. Each time you close the door, you prove that your worth does not depend on anyone else's approval. Each time you choose absence over reaction, you dismantle the illusion of their control. And each time you refuse the game, you reclaim your freedom. The beauty of this transformation is that it requires no confrontation, no grand speech, no dramatic gesture. It requires only discipline, the discipline to remain silent when every impulse screams to respond. The discipline to protect your peace above their pride. The discipline to understand that absence is the loudest message you can send. And here's the paradox: when you finally stop chasing respect, you earn it. When you stop proving your worth, it becomes undeniable. When you no longer react, you rise above. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Strategic silence is that revocation. It is the act of tearing down the false importance you once gave to their words, their games, their power. For them, your silence is humiliation. For you, it is liberation. They are left wondering, replaying, resenting, while you are moving forward lighter, stronger, freer. And nothing destroys a manipulator's ego more than watching you thrive beyond their reach. So understand this clearly: it is not your anger that breaks them, not your revenge, not your speeches. It is your absence. It is your refusal to play. It is the silence that turns their theater of control into an empty stage. And once you walk away, there is no show without you. This is the climax of the Stoic strategy. This is where theory becomes transformation. You are no longer the victim of their games. You are no longer the echo of their voice. You are the silence that cannot be controlled, the absence that speaks louder than any explanation, the calm authority that reshapes the entire story. And in that moment, you finally realize the door is closed, the key is yours, and there will be no return. Silence is not the absence of power, it is the purest expression of it. To walk away without anger, to forgive without reopening the door, to set boundaries without announcing them. This is the essence of Stoic strength. It is a strength that leaves manipulators powerless and gives you back the one thing they can never control: your peace. The lesson is simple but not easy. Most people will never apply it. They will keep talking, keep explaining, keep giving chances. And because of that, they will remain trapped in the cycle. But you now know the truth. Every time you choose silence, you choose freedom. Every time you close the door, you step further into the life you were meant to build, one free of manipulation, free of noise, free of control. Remember, this silence is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is the decision to place your peace above their ego. And in that decision lies your greatest power. If this lesson on Stoicism and strategic silence spoke to you, subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss more insights on breaking free from toxic relationships, defeating manipulation, and building unshakable inner strength. And if you know someone trapped in the cycle of toxic people, share this with them, because sometimes silence is the greatest gift. The door is closed, the key is in your hands, and your freedom begins the moment you choose not to play.